Okay, guys, thanks for joining. Hopefully you can see my screen. Today we're going to be talking about developing a world-class team to execute your sales strategy. So we get asked a lot about how to build a team, how to develop a team. So we're going to be covering all those topics and more today. I see people joining now, which is great news. So welcome. We're going to be kicking off in a couple of seconds, just waiting for the last people to join because the numbers are increasing quite a bit at the moment. So for those who don't know me, I'm James Carey. I'm going to be your host today. So it looks like people are coming in now. So let's get started. So developing a world-class team, what are we going to be talking about today? Going to be talking about who do I hire next? How do I select the best people for my tech company? What are the most successful practices for onboarding? How do I track the performance of my team? And what are the proven practices for retaining my best people? So for those who don't know me, I'm the founder of Sales to Startups. I'm James Kerr Reed, and I've advised over 70 B2B seed and Series A tech companies in the last 3 years. So really pleased to be here and to take your questions as we go as well. Feel free to put your questions in the chat box, and also we can get to as many as we can at the end of the session as well. If not, we can always email you with responses as well. So who do I hire next? Really big question, very difficult one as well. Seen a lot of tech companies hire salespeople thinking that they're going to change the game, change their revenue. All I need is high velocity. I hear I just need feet on the street. I need people doing the doing. I've heard all of these great phrases and more over the last 3 years. So wanted to share with you an actual proven framework for thinking about who to hire next. So first and foremost, think of your goals and outcomes as a founder. Really, really important. And then if you think of point A, where you are today and where you want to be, say that's 6 months or a year's time as an example, what are some of the problems that you're experiencing that are stopping you making that leap from your today's situation to your desired revenue? And then what we want to do is we actually want to attack the root causes. For those who haven't seen, we are doing webinars on crafting a winning sales strategy, where we talk about the framework for identifying some of the root causes. So if you're available, please sign up to that as well. It's a very popular topic as well within our Tech CEO audience. And then options and assumptions. So we're thinking about building some solutions at this point in time. Talking about hiring new people, what are some of the options we've got? Is that in-house? Is that agency? What are some of the assumptions at play when making those decisions? So we need to be wary of our biases and assumptions in this decision-making process. Then at that point, we're able to think about, okay, how is this going to look like? What's the machine going to look like? What's the interaction between marketing, sales, and customer success? Where is that individual potentially we need within that? Or is it outside it? Is it within product or operations potentially? But certainly you think of the machine first, and then you slot the people into the machine. As any sort of great manager, coach would do in sport, for example. So when looking obviously at the hiring scenario, once obviously you've done that initial analysis on the company side, obviously you've got your company goals. Now you need to think about your target customer, the sales cycle, the market opportunity, and also the budget you have available. That's definitely going to influence some of your decision making in terms of who to hire next. If you've only got £2,000 per month in operating cash flow to spend on sales, then that's going to be very different to maybe if you have 20K of operating cash flow to spend in sales. So also depends on potentially funding you might have received and maybe using some of that financing cash as well to accelerate the growth of your business. So really important that you think about these things because they do obviously have a massive influence in the type of person that you hire when you look at your business model and how you're operating in the market and the clients you serve. So how do I select the best salespeople? Selection is probably the most underrated skill in recruitment. Often people think about candidates, and because the recruitment industry is obviously very prolific in terms of its approach and the mechanisms and the policies they use. Even for me as well, I was a previous recruiter. About 10 years ago, I recruited salespeople into tech and financial services companies. So yeah, I know something about sourcing, but I didn't really learn about the selection process. And that's only really when I went into businesses and started hiring teams that you think about actually the selection is where the value comes from. It's a bit like the qualification of a deal, and the sales process is really where the value is created, and therefore the value is reaped in terms of when you come to that client agreement. The same as when you sign an employment contract for between an employer and employee, or even with an agency in terms of their terms of business. So building a selection engine. So what are the parts to really mastering the selection of salespeople? So the 5S process, we often refer to it as. We're going to go through this today. So we start with the scorecard, then we move to sourcing the talent, then we move to selecting the talent, then we sell the opportunity to that great talent we've already selected. And then finally, obviously, we think about the starting and the onboarding of those individuals. So to break that down a little bit more, so scorecard. Okay, what do we mean by a scorecard? A scorecard is a document that shows the outcomes, the values, the abilities, the competencies of that individual. And this is driven to your business goals as well. So you need to have an understanding of how you're actually going to achieve some of the big outcomes you have. It's breaking it down from goals into objectives, and then objectives into initiatives, or project initiatives as well is often referred to as. So you can see here on the left hand side, we've just called it out in terms of example. So you can say particular product lines you might be growing revenue from, and you could say this type of product you're going to move it from this amount of customers to this amount, the same for another product line. So you can really evaluate how you're performing in terms of that revenue, and actually know where it's going to come from. Is it going to come from product penetration? Is it going to come from existing accounts? Is it going to come from obviously expanding kind of the sales capability of your team as well? So in terms of training and enablement, there are different routes in order to achieve your goal as well. So think about putting this into practice. On the right hand side, you see kind of one of the applicant tracking systems we use with clients, and also in-house at sales startups called Team Taylor. But you can kind of pit a lot of these things into obviously your selection process and the engine you're using. Sourcing talent. There are lots of different means from sourcing talent. Here is an extract of, obviously, first and foremost, you've got kind of the job boards, and then obviously you've got the social media platforms that are great at doing that. You've also got the option of bringing in third parties. For example, we offer clients now, existing clients, the ability to source obviously those candidates, and also we take care of the selection, onboarding, and ramping of those individuals. But within your applicant tracking system, you see here Team Taylor, is you can obviously manage people to obviously upload those candidates as well. So you can do kind of an in-house recruiting function, have external agencies manage it in one place as well. There are other obviously great things here. You can see a couple of different things as well. Things like competitions. You can also create kind of trackable links and distribution lists. So you might have good partners. You might be able to speak to some of the startup magazines as well, being able to get new jobs on there, whether it's Sifted or TechCrunch, or Sales Impact Academy, for example, is a great partner of ours. So you can great distribution by kind of jumping on the shoulders of giants and jumping on other people's distribution lists as well. Sometimes it's they're happy to help, and obviously if you work closely with them anyway, then why not? You would do the same for them. So selecting talent. Now, this is quite an advanced skill. Like I said, probably one of the hardest things to master as a leader of a business. So I've given an extract here. this is obviously for kind of a senior role. To give you an example of what we're talking about, I think for SDRs and account executives, you'd be looking at a shorter process, typically kind of a 3-stage process, sometimes down to 2. You can also create these into the same day, but just to run through a little bit more as to what we mean by this. So you've got screening interview. Obviously, that's kind of your first call, maybe 30 minutes in duration. Background interview for a senior role, kind of looking at 75 to 90 minutes. For a junior role, sort of 45 to 60, to actually understand the particular parts of their experience to date. Then you kind of have an assessment task or assessment center, then a sort of final cultural interview, and you take on the references. So I get asked this a lot by people: why would you take reference before making a decision? I just got asked that in the chat as well. Really good question there. So the thing about reference interviews is, why would you want to offer a candidate first before you take on references? And another way to ask that question is to say, what happens if I gave you 90% of the references you needed in order to make a decision on a new hire, and then upon making that offer, you got the final 10%? How much more comfortable would you feel as a leader for hiring that person? So in terms of reference interviews, quick tips on there: you need to be thinking about previous managers, previous reports, previous customers as well. Are great. Client references are really, really valuable to see what it's like to deal with this person and to be sold to, or to market to, or obviously account managed by as well, in the sort of sense of customer success. Really, really important as well to take that. So yeah, I kind of flip it around in our clients, and also in our business. When we're hiring people, we do the same as well. I'm not going to make an offer for someone where I haven't taken references for them as well. So a couple of things as well. Obviously, the first side is just an example, of some of the questions that you might use in the screening interview. There's there's a big complacency within selection of, I've recruited 10, 20 people before. I don't really need to set up these questions. I know what I'm doing. Be very careful of that judgment, because one, it has massive bias within it. Also, we make very emotive decisions, and also you need to create a fair and just process throughout as well. So having a example way of doing things, or a kind of standard approach to taking on these various stages, is very, very important, because you reduce the bias, both cultural as well as kind of work or otherwise biases that you might have. So on the right hand side, you can see some of the questions you might talk about in the reference interview. I've picked those out as well for you guys as well to think about. This is where the early part of the process also connects to the latter stage of the process as well. So yeah, there's obviously a lot that could be written on this topic, but I wanted to give you guys a brief overview of that. So selling the opportunity. So you've got to the final stages, you've understood that they are competent to do the role, they've passed the assessment at this stage. Now, how do you kind of close the candidate? A bit like how do you close a deal in sales? So selling the opportunity. So we talk about the 5F framework: fit, family, freedom, fortune, and fun, as a way to evaluate your notes throughout the process. So you've documented a lot of those questions we saw previously in the selection part of this webinar, thinking about how you document all that intelligence. Now you're going to put that knowledge and information into action in order to sell the opportunity of joining your tech company. So here we've got an example of, is it the right role fit as well? What have they mentioned throughout the process where this is a really good fit for them? Does this match the kind of family environment as well? Family is a major part of life, and we need to be conscious of people's wishes and desires, and often family comes first for many as well. So being cognizant of that. How will this affect the kind of family environment? On the freedom side, so will they have the opportunity to grow, to explore, to make some of their own decisions, to be at least autonomous in quite a few facets of the role? Really, really important, especially for kind of mid-manager and senior roles, a massive driver of selection of a new role. Then fortune. So does the money and the package, the compensation, the ability to earn, the ability to get promoted and to earn more, whether that's share options as well as obviously, base and bonus or commission remuneration. What's important to them there? Is this role, better than others that they're looking at? Is this the type of compensation they want as well? You would have listed a lot of this information throughout the process. So now we're collating that information to almost prepare the pitch or the offer at this point in time. And then finally, the fun. Will they actually enjoy working at your company? Do you have the right culture for them? The things they like to do, the things that they enjoy, and the things they love to do at work, is that very much present in your company? And then at that point, you can create a very compelling offer. You're going to probably major on some of these things. It's not going to be equal on all of them. There's some that may not be really massively important. So you may sort of weight, for example, on sort of 60% on freedom and 30% on fit, and then the others might be minor as well. So on the right hand side, you kind of think about your final decision review as well when going to offer, and obviously compiling that kind of pitch and script for the offer. I'm a big believer in, if you're going to try and change someone's life and career, you really need to be writing out the couple of key points around pitching that offer. You wouldn't do that if you were trying to sign a 70 or 80k deal. Would you do your preparation? You're trying to sign, for example, a business development director. Why are you not doing the same? It should be treated in sync there. So this is a couple of the things that we use as well to think about the team review. So everyone kind of ranks the candidate in terms of the objectives, obviously they can't do, what are their best, the upside, the downside, shall we ultimately offer, when do we want this person to start, the first 90 days as well. And also that great question of how can we screw this up as well. I think sometimes you understand that people have many facets and they have strengths and weaknesses, and ultimately if you don't treat them quite rightly, you're going to border on obviously creating a successful candidate and unsuccessful one. So start like a winner. So we're talking about, obviously now we've got an offer accepted. How do we create a compelling start for a new starter, whether that's a contributor role, a manager, a leader, even sometimes an exec as well? There's 4 phases of this. So we talk about getting to port as an easy way to remember this process. So first, you've got the pre-boarding. So typically, even if you've got 3 months notice period, it'll be about a month before in which you then, drive value into that company. Secondly, talk obviously about the onboarding as well. So that can range obviously 1 to 3 weeks, and then the ramping phase as well. And then finally, they become a team asset. So you really want to create a very structured process. You want to obviously do the admin up front in pre-boarding. You want to onboarding in terms of the company orientation, understanding the market, understanding the problem set. The ramping, you're looking at building pipeline, getting involved in client meetings, submitting, their first proposal. And then team asset, you'll be looking to go into negotiations, proposals, and hopefully sign their first customer in sales. In marketing as well, you would expect them to run their first campaign within the first 12 weeks. So you'd include obviously onboarding and then prepping in the marketing role, and then obviously the first campaign. Typically, for many B2B campaigns, you need kind of 6 to 8 weeks. So that's where you can create obviously an asset. So in the first 3 months, you'll be able to analyze whether you're hiring an SDR with 1 year experience or you're hiring a senior leader with 15 or 20 years experience. You really will understand whether this person can be an asset for the company. And that's why we talk about getting to port for that. So digital insights as well, some of the best practices we found as well. Firstly, ask the new joiner to create their own onboarding plan. Absolutely amazed by people who don't do this. If you want to create a compelling career and get promoted multiple times, you need to take responsibility. And therefore, you want that candidate to take their destiny into their own hands and create that onboarding plan and merge with yours. That should be a very collaborative, also quite exciting process as well, because it becomes real. You understand, the strengths and weaknesses of your new joiner, and where they may need additional help as well. So no one really knows themselves, better than themselves. So they know their own strengths rather than you know them as well as they do at this early stage. Playback meeting the first 2 weeks, it's important for many, at least at manager and beyond. We'd be expecting kind of a strategy and a plan at this point in 2 weeks. Obviously, that's unfortunately for many a bridge too far, and it's obviously a reflection on their quality as candidates, and maybe there may be sort of B team or C player candidates as well. Candidate checkpoints. So when a new joiner comes in, you need to schedule regular review meetings with them. So you have those milestones in the diary, so you can have then a formal review process as well. That would include a 360 review. So getting input from other candidates, other team members as well into those reviews as well. If you're a small team in a startup, you may not have lots of experts in your team. It may be your first sales role, it could even be your first marketing role or your first customer success manager, or at least at that level. So you might have just hired a CMO or a VP of customer success or a VP of sales. And therefore you don't have necessarily that experience to create obviously the skills that they need in their domain. So you need to think both internally and externally for their own personal development. And then also for any role as well, whether you're a junior or a senior, you need to think about getting them on their own project in the first 90 days. We talked about becoming a team asset in that port, guide to onboarding. So we do need to test them and understand whether they can really take ownership of their own project in the first 90 days. So how do I track performance? Yeah, I get asked this a lot. It's very important in the marketing, sales, and customer success domain that we understand, how employees are performing, even if you've outsourced to an agency as well, especially around things like marketing and lead generation. Really important that you do that. So it starts with the tools and tech. You've got to have a place in which you can simulate lots of information and therefore create dashboards and metrics from that. If you don't have any way in creating kind of a data collection, it'll be very difficult to manage performance as well. So that could be potentially one of the first projects as well for that first 2 weeks for some of the roles if you don't have it already. Completing projects on time, really important thing. We really want conscientious and industrious individuals in our team. So if someone is continually delaying the completion of projects, that is definitely a sign that we need to be aware of. So when they talk about, I'll deliver to you by Friday, do they actually deliver and complete it by Friday? And if not, are they allowing you the visibility to see what's going on, where the delay is, what's the new timescale for that project as well? Is really, really important. So then we talk about the quality of work. What they're delivering, is that really the premium quality that you want in your company? 360 review, we talked about that, getting input from other employees into the company and into their own onboarding. And then preparation for one-to-ones. Are they really preparing for those one-to-ones? This is for their benefit, right? That we are creating, their own career. So if they're not taking responsibility for preparing for those one-to-ones and you are coming with the agenda, then that's not necessarily the right way. It should be kind of like an 80-20 relationship as well in terms of those one-to-ones. They should be preparing the content, coming to you with the information, and then you can provide the guidance, support, and potentially network as well to help them grow their careers and their impact for your company. So how do I retain the best people? Yeah, really, really important topic. Retention in technology companies is actually very, very low. For example, a VP of sales currently in technology, we're looking at 12 months for a VP of sales retention. Now, that is an incredibly costly investment for your company. So, if you don't get it right, this could be a massive downside for your company. And we haven't even added in kind of opportunity cost, recruitment cost as well into that. To give you an idea as well, the average by a SME is 125,000 spent on failed hires by every single company in the SME segment in the UK. So that's 5.7 million companies on average spend 125,000 on failed hires. Some are a lot more than that as well, but obviously a very big spectrum of businesses as well as number. So best retention practices, and then I'll come to your questions because I can see them coming in as well. So clear expectations. You've got to set the record as to what needs to be done and by when, and what is the kind of quality, obviously, that needs to be created for that to be a reality. You need to have regular mentoring and coaching with your new employees. Obviously, understand their drivers. Some people are not, for example, financially driven. Some people, just like simple praise, like, that's a really good job. I really like what you've done there. Some people are not very public people as well. So people have different assets and different strengths. And for them as well, people work in different kind of timescales as well, in terms of where their activity and real drive comes from. You've got to give them the space to experiment. We're in a very fast moving industry in technology and software, and things are changing. When I look at sales today, we remote selling, for example, was not something that really was a common thing 10 years ago, and now that's very much on the radar as well. Previously, you had kind of remote sales was actually field sales. So you did a lot of your administration at home and your proposals and preparation, but then you go and meet the clients face to face on their premises. And now you're doing all of the touch points and closing deals in a remote way. So it's a massive evolution. So within that comes a lot of learning and experimentation. So you've got to give them that space as well, to try new things and to improve and to spot challenges as well. You've got to give them the opportunities to grow professionally and personally. I think a big part of, for me, from this is also welcoming opinions that are different from yours and welcoming constructive debate on your own decision making. I think too many people, especially in a leadership function, often hire people just like them, and also people that are quite compliant to their opinion rather than maybe challenging it. It's often when people challenge our own opinion that we become better leaders of our tech companies. So really, really important as well that you give them that voice and that space in which to grow personally and professionally, and obviously you invest in that development as well in terms of courses, tuition, time as well for them to grow and improve themselves. And ultimately, often kind of one of the last things for me in terms of what I found as best retention practice is fair pay and rewards. Especially if someone is asking for an increase in, say, their salary as well, where you can't see the tangible difference. It could be your VP of sales, asking for a pay rise, and they haven't hit target for the last 12 months with the division. It could be your CMO as well asking, for a pay rise as an example, but you're thinking, well, this is the total cost and spend of marketing. This is the, cost in terms of what it's returned. Which way do we need to change the equation here? So be really careful of that, and certainly not the biggest driver for most people. So just to recap on what we covered. So who do I hire next? How do I select the best people for my tech company? We talked about the 5S process. What are the most successful practices for onboarding? We talked about getting to port. That's simple 4 phases of onboarding. How do I track the performance of my team? We talked about that. And then what are the proven practices for retaining my best people? So I'm just going to go to you guys. I know we're coming up to time now as well, so I'll take your questions now. So let me have a look here. Cool. So we've got a question about when is the right time to hire a VP of sales? Now, yeah, a very big question. Obviously, I would encourage you guys to do some of that early research as well, and obviously craft your sales strategy before kind of making that massive strategic decision. Um, Typically, as well, with unpredictable revenue, especially at the seed and Series A level, hiring a VP of sales early is probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make. The reason for that is obviously on cash flow purposes, one, but then secondly is that person takes quite a long time in which to create traction and appeal. And also, for many, don't recognize what we're actually asking of the VP of sales. Right? It's a very particular type of candidate we're looking for. Someone that's a bit like asking sort of Alex Ferguson to be not only the head coach, the manager who reports to the board, but also asking them to play midfield each week. And that's quite a difficult thing for a VP of sales to do. And you should be wary of that. So someone who spent the last 5-10 years in management, and you're asking them to be a frontline salesperson and then build a team around them, if you had done something for 5 or 10 years and really tried to hone your craft, and then someone said, would you like to do what you did 10 years ago, probably you wouldn't be as much in the sweet spot as you would be in terms of managing and growing a team. So be wary of that. Is that it's a very expensive mistake to make, and also I would certainly think about at least until Series A. I would be thinking then, it's a good time to hire a VP of sales. Once you've built the foundations and the structure and a sense of predictability, it makes sense for a VP of sales to come in. But there are obviously interim options that you can look at. Obviously, you can speak to us as well. How we feel that bridge where there's slightly unpredictable revenue in your company, and how to get to a point where you can actually select and onboard a great full-time VP of sales. I've got another question here as well around what are some of the worst hiring mistakes that seed companies have made. Very particular question there. So seed companies, I think one of the biggest things is because the founder's skill set is not often sales, they have a propensity to want to increase output through sales, which they believe is hiring salespeople that are often quite inexperienced to create what they often refer to as velocity, or greater depth or greater feet on the street. The challenge there is that you're expecting someone else to come in with not too much experience to help in a field which you don't have much experience on, and also the lack of clarity and direction to that inexperienced person will be telling. So you are creating, in a sense, a chasm of development, and also within progression of your company, because you're not actually empowering the team, the direction, the clarity that you need for those individuals. So yeah, I think hiring salespeople is one of the biggest mistakes, and hiring the wrong salespeople, onboarding the salespeople, obviously within that, is a massive mistake of seed companies. I think the other one is that often we think of generating revenue as talking about leads first. We have this absolute obsession with creating more leads. And as I said to one seed founder the other week, that really and truthfully, if you say only had 10 leads per month, which even through kind of referrals, introductions, a bit of social, a bit of email, even if it was a bit slapdash, most people could probably get to about 10 leads per month. And what they were then doing is they said they needed, 20 leads a month, and that would increase their revenue. But I also said, so what you're wanting to do is increase your lead count by 100%, where the known quality is unknown at this point because of your market traction. Your proposition also needs development, and also your people need development as well as the process. And then finally, there's no guarantee that you will obviously convert those additional leads. But as an option B, why don't we, instead of converting one customer a month, why don't we try and convert 2 customers a month from the 10%, the 10 leads per month? And they thought, okay, that would for us, create about another 50,000 of revenue per year, about 600,000 pounds per year. For them, they're a 400,000, ARR company that would create Series A within 12 months. They had about 18 months of runway. That made perfect sense to them. So be really, really careful in that you don't take kind of a leads first approach. At this point in time, seed and Series A, our focus right now is gaining new clients, converting those clients, growing those clients, creating amazing case studies to show that our proposition has value in the marketplace, it's valuable to a certain niche, and that if we were to gain further investment and obviously greater revenue, we could really expand the impact of our business and fulfill our mission, right? So don't necessarily get too sidetracked from that. So really, really important you do that. I know we're coming up to time now, so feel free to buzz any questions in this final part. But just wanted to wrap up, and for those who I haven't got to, I'm happy to reply to via email. So I'll get this through an extract to reply to you guys. So yeah, just to round up, if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can type in my very strange Scottish name there, and also visit our website, salesforce.startups.co.uk, where you can also book a call with our team as well there on our website. Alternatively as well, if you can click on the slides or in the show notes as well. We'll have that as well. So thank you very much, guys. Developing a world-class team to execute your sales strategy. James Kerr Reed. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks. All the best. Bye now.